All right. Welcome everyone to our Monday morning Global Heart Resonance. And we're here coming together really for the good of the whole. This call is hosted by Good of the Whole. And my name is Shelley Darling, for those of you that are new. And I'm here in Sarasota, Florida, and really want to welcome you to this this oasis of love. We come here to really be received and nurtured. So many of us are really doing such beautiful work out in the world, and this is really a place of restoration. And we're here as planetary stewards, committed to the good of the whole, listening and speaking from our hearts with the intention of expanding this beautiful resonant field of love. And as planetary stewards of good of the whole, we are advocating, cultivating the ethos of wholeness, embodying this consciousness of love as a foundational principle for really building a new world culture, a culture of connection and wholeness. And so today we hold this call every Monday, and every Monday there's a new resonant reflection that we come here, and it's a participatory call for those who wish and feel comfortable. We invite you to share the way this call works. It's about an hour, and I'll share a few guidelines because here we're really focused on the field itself, this field of evolution, and building a coherent field together. So there's a few guidelines. It's a little bit different. There's a lot of beautiful circles in the world, really doing incredible work. Here we're focused on the emerging field and really feeling ourselves in that oneness, in that embodying that creative consciousness. So this morning, we always open with a resonance. And my beautiful sister, Julie Krull, who is the co-founder of Good of the Whole, is joining us here this morning, and she'll open our call. Then I will share the guidelines and the theme for opening this connection today. So Julie, this beautiful crystalline talking stick, I'll pass that over to you.
Okay, well, received. Let's just take a few deep cleansing breaths. Bring ourselves into this moment. We were just talking before this call that the breath brings us into this space, as well as sound. Listen for your breath. Listen for your heartbeat. With each breath, settle into that stillness within the heartbeat. We're talking about this resonant field of love. Experience yourself as that field, within that field. And with each breath, experience that wholeness. Breathe into that holiness of this moment, of this embodiment. And allow that holiness to move gently, to flow beyond our imagining into the spaciousness of no time, no space. And as we flow, we continue to remember our wholeness as holiness, the divine presence within, where there's no separation. And with that, we breathe in gratitude, bring ourselves back into the heart of this moment, this infinite moment of now. And listen to the promises with Shelley.
So welcome everyone. Welcome those of you who've just gotten on to our Global Heart Resonance call. Thank you, Julie. And this is just an opportunity for us to feel that connection of love between us and allowing that connection to express itself. And that's really what, as I listened to Julie, that experience of wholeness, of holiness. And that's really the truth of who we are. And this call is really allowing that to express itself. So the way this call opens is that there's just a couple of guidelines. And here we're focused on, as if you imagined a wheel, the hub of that wheel, that hub of this connection. And we're really just holding the energy of this resonance together, this intelligent field that informs us, and we, as we express, fill it and inform it. And so this field starts to expand. We understand evolution, this spiraling of consciousness, always recalibrating into its highest potential. And that's really our intention here today, is to experience that, to become the embodied expression of that. So we invite you to really listen and to begin to learn to track the thread of the expression itself, that conversation that's emerging, to track it as if you were individually, or as we are individually, as that shuttle in that weaving loom. We are the weavers. So we come here to experience that in present time. So we invite you to speak 1 to 2 minutes and to speak from the essence of your experience. This whole field as it informs us and is informing you. And when that happens, there's this magic that happens. We start to experience a sensation, and to be aware of that sensation. We call it love. We feel it as connection, and it actually it's infusing the whole circle here. So again, just limiting your contributions to 1 to 2 minutes. You can speak more than once. And here we really allow, and we trust the pause in between. That silence, because in that silence, in that liminal space, is when the information starts to come in. So that's the magic of the field here this morning. And I love this quote: just step back and allow yourself to be drawn into the pause. From the silence within, this pause, this quiet, we speak from that place that lights our soul, captivates our attention as we soar 1 octave higher. And this is really the experience of this call here this morning. So today's call is called Keepers of the Promise. And this is just something that was moving inside of me. And what about the promise? She cried. The inner waters flowed as she was in a deep moment of remembering. And what about the promise? And that leads to a book that was handed to me many years ago. And it's called The Book of Love. And this comes from the Book of Love. There are 3 promises that are made at the dawn of time, each of them sacred. The first promise is to God, your mother and father in heaven. It represents the most divine mission, your divine mission. What have you come here to accomplish in the image of your creators? It is the reason for incarnation, the purest intention of your soul. The second promise is to the family of spirit within, which you were created and will belong to through eternity. It represents your relationship to each of the souls in your family and how you have agreed to assist them in their mission and theirs in yours. The third promise is to yourself. It represents how you desire to learn and grow and love within the context of incarnation. Align yourself with these 3 promises, for they are sacred above all else. Remember them and cherish them, and you will know the greatest joy available to humankind. For those with ears to hear, let them hear it. And so we invite you just to breathe with that, to take a pause here right now. And in right moment, when you feel that nudge, that impulse of evolution to speak, we invite you to literally reach in and grab this beautiful crystalline talking stick, this virtual talking stick, and share your voice into the field. Again, speaking 1 to 2 minutes, and for the rest of us, we just open to receive that unconditional receptivity and take that in until the next person speaks. So with that, I'm complete. And also, please say your name. So if those people that are on the phone can associate that voice and then just speak from your heart into the circle. And with that, I'm complete. Sorry, just also for those of you who are on mute, please unmute yourself. And that's it. Thank you. I am Oriana. Closer to my microphone here. Oriana, when you speak, can you speak a little bit louder?
Yeah, I had to move up closer to my
microphone. Okay, thank you.
I realized I was far away.
I know. Thank you.
I am Oriana. I am still. How do I make my presence known? Still. Infinite still. Where movement is a miracle. Moving. What does moving feel? know. Hmm. I wonder. What does wonder feel? Ah. It feels a miracle. Oh, I wonder what a miracle feels. Miracle feels. I wonder. I wonder if wonder is what I am. Whoa. Ah. And I am still. Ah. Wonder in a field of miracles. I wonder, what does it feel to be a miracle? Life is a miracle. I'm still a miracle of life. Ah, I am complete.
Hello, all. This is greetings to all. This is Kate. I'm in South Dakota. And speaking of the promise, I felt compelled to pick up this, which thank you for the places you take us in resonance, feeling just being in this circle. Sometimes I think may the love and beauty I feel in this moment spread like this silent, virulent contagion. And I really don't know if I can improve on the silence, but I felt compelled to bring you. I have this New Energy to Row by Michael Sharp, and it's kind of always guided me in such a good way. And he there's only 22 cards, I think, but one of them is called The Promise, and it's the sun. And I always resonate, I'm a Leo, really resonate with the sun. So I want to share this and see if it fits into our conversation this morning. In the old energy, this is the energy of co-option and control. This is the carrot on the stick. This is the message that you are special or chosen, and the intimation of sex, wealth, power, and glory. But if you but submit to the power, if you want to realize the promise, if you want to get what's coming to you, be a good boy or girl. Follow the rules, do what you are told, submit and comply, and your reward shall be great. In the new energy, he suggests the promise of return to innocence. In the new energy, this is the promise of a return to innocence and divinity. This is an acknowledgement of all of your sacrifice and all of your pain. This is a recognition of the work that you have done, and a promise that no matter what you have gone through, no matter how deep the darkness, and no matter what you may have done, you can always return to the source, to innocence, and to true spiritual power and glory. There is nothing to be afraid of. Consciousness will find a way. And I feel like now I'll try to find a picture of the card and I will show that. But I feel complete in sharing the perspective of Michael Sharp on the new energy of the promise. And I'll return that talking stick. Thank you for listening.
So I'm so happy to to have this theme to open to explore, to remember. I feel that it has brought me close to the promise that is in that is in each moment, which is also very much connected with the potential. It is very much connected with the longing that is within us. It's a sister of that longing. And it's also a part of realizing our fuller potential that we touch into each time we create a circle like this. And the promise is sitting right there in the center of the circle. So thank you. I feel complete.
Good morning, everyone. This is a wonderful continuation of a conversation about this subject this morning. And I've been thinking, without knowing I was thinking, about the first part of that question, which is mission. And what came to me was an experience I had at a Brew Joy workshop many years ago, in the early 80s. And I was deep into being into what I thought was my purpose and meaning, and was there at the workshop exploring it. And we were talking a lot about the dark side. And I think we were all getting a little afraid of what the dark side was because we were being asked to visit it. And we went into a meditation beforehand, and I was asked in the meditation to go up. This was in my own head created this. I was asked to go up on a stage where there was a huge concrete that looked like a concrete casket. And so I went up, and I was supposed to look into this casket, and which was my dark side, and see if I could claim who I was. And as I looked into the casket, these hands were coming up to grab me, and there was boiling oil that they were coming out of. And it wasn't anything I wanted to go into for sure at that point, but some piece of me said, you have to go into this. You have to grab one of those hands and get taken down into the dark side and find out who you are in the darkness. And so after several tries, I clasped one of the hands and got pulled down into the oil and found myself on a circular slide, going down, sliding on the slide full of oil. And I'm looking all around me in these beautiful pictures of different civilizations and countries and things came up, and I was being taught their history. And I kept saying to myself, no, there's something wrong here. This can't be the dark side. And so I literally turned myself around, pulled myself back up to the top, grabbed another hand and said, now this time I'll find out about the dark side. Did the same thing again. On the third time, I decided that maybe there was something here for me to learn, and that the dark side isn't what I thought it was. And so I went down and down around. It seemed like a forever trip. But all along, I was taught the beauty of all civilizations. And then it began to get closer and closer to when there were no civilizations, and down to where there were only, finally, the only thing that was left was the ocean. And in the middle of the ocean, there was a rock. And the waves were pushing against that rock. And I realized I was the rock, my own internal rock. And I don't think I have ever felt so alive, so absolutely every cell in my body was alive, saying, yes, yes, yes. This is why I'm here. This is who I am. And I kept saying, you've got to remember this. You've got to remember this. And then I slowly went back and was in my chair. And it's an image that I don't think I'll ever forget, because, it's easy to go into finding out what I'm doing wrong or what I'm not completing or whatever it is. But when I remember that trip down to the dark side, finding out that the beauty and the essence of who I am down there, I do pull myself out. Sometimes it takes longer than I'd like, but it's a beautiful image to have. And I wish, like Julie had that beautiful picture of the crane, which I've put on my webpage since then, or Facebook page, an image of that. It's in my head, but I would love to see that image. Anyway, I just wanted to share that and give thanks for all the beauty you all give to me. I'm complete.
Well, I'll grab the crystalline talking stick. Welcome to our people who are just joining us. So what a thread we're weaving here this morning, just this return to innocence and this relationship to this interconnected place in self that's whole and complete and is in its. I'm sitting here next to a friend who just joined me, Stephen, who just flew down here, and I can't get this image out. Since we're talking about images, out of my mind, he has this beautiful place in Vermont, and he told me the story of creating these springs, this rivulet of these three little, the spring that sort of flowed into these three little pools, and then showed me this video, and it reminded me so much of this place that I am, that we are together, this spring, this eternal spring of love, of connection, of love, of when Henry said the word belonging, I thought of belonging, this place where, that we're this well that always is filling us. We come to this place, an oasis is that place where we are restored. It's, this calls a restorative practice. And so these springs just reminded me so much of this experience of life where we have to, clear away that which, we have to allow that which is not our us, that's really really clogging that spring from really flowing. And I just feeling that on this call, this dimension of self that we are constantly coming back to, this wellspring of love, this wellspring of life. And listening to the stories, I really felt that thread of, what we think of ourselves as the dark side, which is that only that place where we feel separation, and when we tap into that wholeness, it doesn't even exist. The spring flows. And so just kind of really recognizing that, and seeing these different faces pop on the screen. Is that spring coming forth, that attractor field, and around that spring, I was looking at these pictures of these healthy trees and this wildlife and this energy flowing. So with that, I'm complete, and I pass a crystalline talking stick. And what's the crystalline talking stick? It's just energy. It's matter. It's water, in its most massive form, So with that, I pass this on. I'm complete.
Few things.
Okay. Sure.
My name is Stephen. I'm a friend of Shelley's, an old friend. And it's beautiful to be here. I just bow to the light that's within all of you, that I see with all of you. And your longing. And I love what Henry said about promise is a sister to longing. That's very beautiful, Henry. And I feel there is a promise and a longing, in all of us that's always calling us to evolve as individuals and as a species. And, in the Buddhist tradition, things happen when the conditions are right. Conditions lead to manifestations of things happening. And so you're creating these conditions here, this condition for, like Shelley said, a spring to spring forth, a blossom to come. And I really bow to your energy and your desire for that. I told Shelley a quote I heard the other day. I'm a big, fan of Henry David Thoreau, and I heard a quote that I never had heard before. And I thought I'd heard just about everything Henry had said. And somebody told me that this quote, that investigation does not necessarily lead to wisdom. Wisdom comes from beholding. And I've been working with that word, beholding, a lot, just like belonging and beholding. And to behold, if you really hold that word, beholding, this is the promise, that we can behold. For me, the beauty of this life, the miracle that was being talked about, of just being present, just this, not needing to add or subtract to it or create drama or take drama away. Whatever is in front of us, whatever presents itself, to just be with it, and to see that in that moment, in that it is that promise of unfolding and evolving and tapping into the love, this resonance field that you're creating. It's a beautiful thing. Very beautiful. I'm very privileged. I feel blessed to be here with you. So thank you for having me here, and I wish you all the very best. I'm complete.
I'd like to to acknowledge that came to mind after Dina arrived with her grandchild, that the promise that resides in each child, and that also resides, or that we can behold in each child, and also resides in the divine child, the inner divine child in each of us. So when we take time to honor, to to behold, such a beautiful quote. Thank you, Stephen. That we're recognizing that and celebrating it.
Mm. Mm-hmm.
Feel complete.
Mm-hmm. Mm. Good morning. It's good to see you guys again. Oh my. Yeah, my schedule on Mondays has been quite different lately, and it was different today. I had a doctor's appointment early, so good to see you. And this new look at beholding. I love that too. Yeah, inquiry has been something that I've used when I'm really wanting to look into something. I'm inquiring into this, looking this direction, but to behold, to be there, truly holding what's present with me, for me. It's really much deeper, and I really, really love that. Many of us were on a call with Flo Avia, Magdalena, and I'm reading for the second time this book, I Remember Union, the story of Mary Magdalene. Being present with all that she had, all that she was holding, beholding, the good and the bad, ups and the downs, the darkness and the light. But truly being with it and seeing it for what it was, and also trusting. I just got in at the, I don't know just how far you were into your story, June, but it seemed like that's what you were talking about. And I appreciate that. I have in my life been cautious, been a cautious soul, I guess, and shielded myself from the darkness. So just to learn to accept that, to behold that as well. It's a deep subject. So I appreciate you bringing that up, and you've got to just be with it. Just got to be with what life brings you. Yeah, and I was associated with Quakers for a good while in my younger years, and one thing comes to mind that's similar to what you were talking about, the Buddhist way. Proceed as way opens. Just wonder sometimes, what the next step is, way to go. But the way opens. It's what's present now. That's what you're beholding. That's what you're being with. So that has meaning for me also. Anyway, it's so good to see you guys again, some new faces as well. And love being here with you. I'm complete.
This is Oriana. And I have a note that says from Julie, I'm feeling you, Oriana, but not hearing you. So I'm not sure, can anyone hear me? And yeah, and I will attempt to speak up here. I think I'm on my small computer and just see what we can do. And I felt to just bring forth the sacredness from what June was saying about going into the dark. I had an experience of being on Ayers Rock in the Australian outback, now Uhuru. And I was on top of that rock by myself on new moon night. And I set my blanket and water down, and the rock had been underwater for millions of years, and it rolls and sways like a waveform. And I tipped my head back to look at the stars in the Australian outback new moon night. Oh my, I was completely awed. And I kept twirling around, looking at everything with my head back, so that by the time I put my head upright, I was completely disoriented. I had no idea where I had left my blanket and water. They were nowhere in sight. And you can't stay the night on the desert without blanket and water. And I was just in this moment of, what do I do? And I heard this voice say, this way, come over this way. And I walked that direction, and then I heard another voice, no, over here. And I walked that way. And then I heard another little voice, no, this way. And finally I said, wait, I am the invited guest. Get me back to my blanket and water now. And suddenly it was like this pathway opened, and there were my blanket and water, and these were the guardian spirits that were just messing with me to see how and why I was there. And that night I was expanding into the star field and into what looked to be a black hole. And as I was going inside of this black hole, it was like this creature inside that was all scrunched up and contained. And it said to me, I am all darkness, and I am not evil. And then it began to spread its wings. And from that time, I have known to journey into the darkness to find what is not evil. That fear that we hold that the darkness is the absence of light, and all we have to do is bring light to it and it'll go away. What if the darkness holds our sacred knowing of what the highest possible future is? What if the real story unfolding is that we begin in dark? As a seed is planted in the ground, we begin our journey in sacred dark of a mother's womb. And it's returning to this sacred dark that releases the fear of being without light. For as sacred dark, holds the miracle of life, originating life. Just as life longs to create, non-existent life yearns for life, creating life. What does it feel to yearn as sacred dark for the highest possibility, our future that is meant to be made of love? Entering sacred dark, unfurling like the butterfly encoded within the caterpillar that knows, that's right, I'm supposed to fly. And I am complete.
This is Julie. I love all the storytelling. All the storytelling. We're telling stories like we're sitting around the campfire. It's just beautiful. And I had two stories that came to mind when we're talking about this light and dark. And it's amazing how our theme just continues to weave and move and transmute and transform in these. But we I talked about this building this morning on a conversation. We own an old turn of the century 2-story building in our little town. It's a half a block. And it's built in the 1890s. It has a full basement that goes a half a block long. So you go down and you can walk clear through this open space. Used to be an antique shop down there before the fire marshal got involved. And the top story windows were boarded up in the 80s by my husband's parents, who previously owned this building. And they literally boarded it all up. And this poor building was in the dark. And so there's stories about the dark. There's stories about the haunted entity that's there, that presence that only comes out after 11 o'clock p.m. But nobody used to like to go into the basement. All the employees would be freaked out if they had to go down there for something. Into the dark. It's cool, it's dark. And the basement has a smaller ceiling. And about a month ago, they were hooking up a new internet service. And I went down there and trying to give lights to the guys. And, you know, we're all always taking so many flashlights and things down there because it's so dark down there. And all of a sudden it occurred to me, there are light switches everywhere. There are outlets for light bulbs everywhere. No, I don't know what you call it. It's not an outlet, but there are light bulbs everywhere. Why is it so dark down there? And that day, a serviceman was exchanging out all of my bulbs and banisters in my office, which was right above there, with the LEDs. So all the old bulbs were coming out, all the old floodlights, all the fluorescent banisters, everything was being switched out. And I left that serviceman thinking, there's a bulb burned out. I'm just going to go change that bulb. And I went upstairs and he's like, here, take some of these. I'm like, oh, yeah. All these old floodlights that they were taking out. And I went downstairs and I began replacing bulbs. And one by one, all of these different rooms throughout this whole space, they're not really rooms because they're just like these few boards that will create some kind of a boundary, but that you could see through everything. All of a sudden, every one of those lights worked And this whole basement was illuminated, so bright and so amazing. And the same thing has happened upstairs, because these old boarded up windows, nobody wanted to go up there. It was freaky. It was weird. It had dust. It had old furniture. It had all of this stuff. Nobody liked to go up there. One by one, my husband and I began putting new windows in. And all around half of the building upstairs now, there's light. So the same woman, I went into my husband's office, and one of the women there last week, I said, the jeweler just dropped a pendant down her cold air return, and she needs to go to the basement. Her husband's coming to the basement to try to get it out, because there's a jewelry store on the main floor. She's like, I don't want to go down there. It's creepy. And I said, I changed all the bulbs and it's amazing. And she went downstairs and I told her, just flip some of these switches. And all of a sudden she likes the basement. It's cool. It's really cool. And she came up yesterday as we were working to look at some of the old refrigerators that were upstairs, because her husband was going to take them, see if he could plug them in and start using some of those old refrigerators and make a smoker out of another one. And so her and her 2 young children and her husband came, and she hated the upstairs. She hated it. It was creepy up there. She never wanted to go upstairs. And now we have all these lights and windows, and it's cool up there. The only thing that changed was a little bit of light. It's always been cool. And whether we know it or not, that light is always there, even when we can't see. So anyway, I just love the storytelling, and I don't know why, but I was just kicked with the impulse to share that story, because I think it's an amazing, fun way to look at life and that dark side and that womb of creation where all things are possible and our potential selves live. So I'm complete.
This is Dinama. I just am so thrilled and enthralled by us focusing on the divine, creative, dark, juicy. It's like Lilith is holding her place, the dark feminine as she's called, and waiting to be recognized for the creativity and the new beginnings that occur within that deep, dark, muddy soil of life. And recognizing that this darkness wants to be recognized in the light, wants to be held in the divine purpose of its manifestation within our experience here on this hologram we're creating through our thoughts and our heart frequencies. And I wanted to share one thing, also a story, a little bit of a story of my time in Glastonbury, where I met a woman. She's now called Unity Grace. She goes by Unity Grace. And she has recently been videoing, sending out videos of downloads she's receiving from Spirit. She's an earth walker and a grid adjuster. I don't know how to exactly express her part, but what she downloaded the other day is that the old matrix is gone. Energetically, it's vanished. There's only the remnants of the holograms that appear to be racking our unity and our harmony. So, and that swan, or not swan, but crane, the lighted crane, all she said is our part, each of us who is conscious in the light, to simply be the light wherever we are, with whomever we're co-creating or converging, and hold that light, just like the crane above the gray. Yes, there. And that's it. Love the moment in that agape frequency of neutrality and wholeness. So I'm complete. My grandson's also complete. So.
Okay, so let's all take a breath in this beautiful sacred darkness, this womb of life that's always creating itself. And I'm really blissed out right now. Follow your bliss. Just because there has been a part of me that has been really afraid of the dark. Like, you can't probably get me to go on a vision quest out in the darkness, and it's so much easier just to focus on the light. And I feel that this is a really powerful movement into the fullness of who we be. Just this energy that's coming forth today, and just it's been so enlightening, right? It's such an enlightening experience. And what was coming to me was, oh wait, there's a fourth promise. It's the promise of the moment. It's of being present in the moment, where we open to receive the light of creation as it's unfolding. So with that, I want to just invite anyone who hasn't shared just to presence themselves if they would like to. And we just take a moment of silence, a pause, just to see if that, just to breathe together. And we have a very special way of ending this call each week. And it's a choir of yum. And what we do through that yum is to just send the vibration out to the planet. This incredible building of this field, this coherent resonance. So with that, we invite you to bring your love in your heart, unmute yourself. Everyone can unmute themselves. And we just take a moment, and it goes like this. Yum, 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 yum. Mwah. Yeah. Big heart love to everybody. We'll see you next week. If you haven't, please go register on Good of the Whole, and you'll get the weekly themes and the link to click in. So with that, we adore and love you, and we'll see you then. And we'll be sending out a replay. Much love, everybody. Thank you for joining us.
And Nama, so good to see your grandbaby. Mwah, mwah.